What you love, you will love. What you undertake, you will do. You are to be relied on. Small wonder if you have not learned that yet. You have had only 17 years to learn it. But consider, Lebanon, to refuse death is to refuse life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a novel review, the book podcast, where I, Seamus, review a different book every week. If you are a lover of books and literature, then welcome. Thanks for joining me. You're in the right place because every week I review a different book, and this week is, of course, no different. I am reviewing the third book of the Earthsea trilogy, The Farthest Shore. I'm holding up my copy for the benefit of those on YouTube, as always. This particular edition I spoke about because it actually contains the first 4 books, and I was a little bit confused as to why it contains 4 of 6 books, and given that the first 3 are a separate trilogy to the second 3, why it contains the first 4 books with no kind of explanation. I spoke about that, and thankfully some people in the comments cleared it up for me, so thank you so much for everyone for doing that. But yes, reviewing the third and final book for the first trilogy of the Earthsea books, and what a journey, what a fantastically beautiful journey it has been. I've really enjoyed my time here. Ursula K. Guin is just a phenomenal writer. I'd never read anything of hers before, and now I've read, of course, 3 books, and I plan to read the final 3 books soonish, but not right away. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. I mean, already I'd say this is in my top 5 fantasy series. This was just an incredible journey, incredibly beautiful, and just a wonderful time to spend time with. So that's what I'm going to be speaking about today, so stay tuned for that. I will then, of course, be announcing the next fantasy book that I will be doing, the next fantasy series that I will be doing over the next 3 months, October, November, and December for 2025. And then we're on to 2026, and that's kind of scary. So yeah, today I'm talking about The Farthest Shore for Earthsea. A bit of housekeeping, as always. If you would like to like and subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate that. Of course, click the duck in the corner if you're on YouTube. 5-star reviews also go a long way. I want to give a shout out everyone that emails me and has conversations with me, everyone that comments on Instagram or the YouTube videos. Thank you so much for engaging. I really enjoy talking to you guys and hearing your opinions of particular stories. If you picked up on different things that I didn't pick up on, if you read it a different way than I read it, I really enjoy that. I really appreciate all the time you guys give me in giving me those responses. So thank you so much for everyone that sends me emails or comments or sends me messages. I greatly appreciate you guys, so thank you so much. Okay, so here we go. The Farthest Shore, Earthsea. Fantastic little book. First, I will say I did manage to find the final 2 books. I thought they had quite nice covers. The annoying thing, I think, about discovering these books, these fantasy books, and getting them in a sort of 1 book series that contains the first 4 books is now I want to go back and find the individual books sort of in more traditional original covers, because I think they're just absolutely fantastic books, and I don't know, it's just something about me wants to own them all individually. I did manage to find the final 2 books, Tales from Earthsea and The Other Wind. I'll hold them up for the benefit of those on YouTube, of course. Wonderful little covers. They're technically the exact same cover with a little difference for a picture in the middle, but very cheap as well. I think I got them for £4 brand new, so how could I say no to that? I picked them up thinking that I might do them for the next fantasy series in terms of October, November, December, and just do the Earthsea trilogies back to back, but I decided to not do that just purely because I had such a great time with the first 3 books. I want to kind of hold off on these 3 books. That might sound a bit odd because, why would you want to delay a good time? But I think I just want to process the first trilogy first, let that sit for a bit before jumping into the second trilogy, because I have a feeling that, this is just going to be another beautiful trilogy, and I just want to sort of have them there ready to go for when I absolutely want a beautiful trilogy. But that being said, I'm already eyeing up January, February, March next year, so I'll probably get into them. This was an interesting third book. A lot of people sent me messages about it. A lot of people said you might not like it as much. A lot of people said the third and fourth book are not people's favorites, and I read a lot of comments on various sites and Goodreads and all these kinds of things where people say they don't really like this third book, and I guess it's kind of interesting because I can see where they're coming from, but I don't technically agree with it. And I think the reason people maybe don't enjoy this third book is because it's kind of the end and it feels like we just started to get going. I mean, of course, they're quite short stories in the first place. They're all around 150 pages, which is relatively short for a fantasy series. So to only have, 450 pages, had to do some dodgy maths there very quickly, only have 450 pages that make up the entire trilogy is incredibly brief, when a lot of fantasy series, that's half the first book. So it is quite a brief series. The first book is about Ged. The second book, Ged appears in, but just towards the end. And then in this third book, we have Ged as quite an old character, and he's sort of towards the end of his life. And I can see why people might be a bit frustrated by that, because it feels like we just got to know Ged. We just started to understand him as a character and get to know him, and we want to spend more time with him. And then it's just kind of like, no, he's old now, like he's lived his life. And it feels almost like we've been cheated of that life, if I can say that. We've missed so many good stories along the way that could have been told. And here we are just at the end of his life, living quite a not quiet, but it feels like quite a quiet end to the trilogy, which, yeah, I mean, a lot of people I don't think have enjoyed as much or didn't appreciate it, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was just a really great end to the trilogy, because I think the trilogy is incredibly quiet throughout the entirety of it. It's not focusing on or building to these large battle sequences or anything like this. It is kind of like a quiet, achieving story where it's more about the journey we're undertaking and the conversations we're having with people along the way and the lessons we're learning along the way on those journeys. And I think I really enjoyed it for that. I think I should probably do a brief overview, but it was really interesting. I'm just going to completely go against what I just said about doing an overview, and this does relate to it, is whenever I read a book, I have my book of notes here, and I take down notes as I'm reading particular quotes that interest me or ideas or something like that. But then when I finish a book, I normally wait a few days, maybe a week, before I actually write up the show notes, and it gives me a chance to sort of process the story and sort of see what sticks out to me after that initial sort of put down. And after a week, I kind of sat down to write up the notes for the Farthest Shore, and I honestly couldn't remember too much of the storyline, and I found that really interesting, because I think Ursula K. Guin's writing style is absolutely phenomenal, and I think it's an incredibly visual story. You can really picture scenes as you're reading them. But when it came to remembering the storyline, I was like, oh, I don't actually remember that much in any great detail. And I was kind of like, why can't I remember that? And it's not a criticism at all, because then it sort of dawned on me, at least for my particular read, I don't think this third story is really about the storyline. I think it's more about the relationship between Ged and a boy that goes on in the story, and that to me was the central story, even though they're of course doing this almost side quest, as I now view it, as kind of what they're doing throughout the course of the story. But it's more about the relationship between the two of them, how it builds, and how Ged tries to impart knowledge upon this boy. But the brief overview now is magic is fading from the world. This prince from Enlad has come to Ged, who's now the Archmage, and says, magic is fading, what's going on? And they sort of go off on this little quest together, and it's like it's more or less a father-son kind of adventure, and they try to figure out what is going on in the world that is causing magic to fade from the world. And it's just this really beautiful story, because Arren is quite young. I believe he's 17, so he's just really a boy, and it's just this beautiful tale about Ged trying to impart some of his knowledge onto Arren as a young boy. Ged, of course, as we know from the first book, was an incredibly outlandish, impetuous young boy that got up to all kinds of dastardly actions that had great consequences upon himself, really. And that was sort of the main storyline of the first book, is his actions having consequences upon himself. And that's kind of what this third book I felt was about. It's about him as a person who's trying to impart some knowledge upon this young boy and be like, look, I know you're young, and I know you don't really understand the world yet and understand your place within the world, but it's important that you understand that you occupy a part in this world. You occupy a place in this world, and therefore you're going to have an influence upon this world, and everything you do is going to have an influence that ripples out in a really, potentially destructive way or beautiful way, or, you don't really know, but you've just got to try to do the best you can with the best intentions, and just understand that everything you do has consequences. And so as I was reading, I was sort of reading it with the knowledge that this is the third and final book of the series. You know, it's the last time we're going to be with Ged. And I don't know, I guess, yeah, I didn't focus too much on what they were actually doing coming back to this, you know, that I couldn't really remember the story. I guess I wasn't paying too much attention to what they were actually doing. I myself became Arren, the character, and that I was just trying to really pay attention to what Ged was doing and the knowledge he was trying to impart. And I guess it made for this really beautiful but kind of melancholic reading experience, because I realized suddenly I was at the end. You know, I kind of, I guess, had this idea that because I knew there was 6 books, maybe he was going to appear in all 6 books. You know, maybe he still does appear in some regard, but the end of this story sort of suggests to me maybe he doesn't appear. But it was just kind of this like sudden realization that, you know, suddenly Ged is old, and this is like the moment where we get to listen to him and try steal some of that knowledge. And it just made for this really kind of melancholic reading experience where we're having an opportunity to have a conversation with him and say goodbye. And yeah, I think it's, oh, who was it? I think it's Schopenhauer says like every goodbye is a foretaste of death, and it really kind of felt like an end. And then like another quote came to mind. I think the end of The American Office, Andy has that beautiful, beautiful line, probably one of the best lines in the show, where he says, and now as I've said that, I'm probably going to misquote it, but he says something along the lines of, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. And it's kind of like, yeah, we had the good old days. We had the adventure with Ged in the first book. We then got the Tombs of Atuan, where Ged appears again. And suddenly now we're at this old age where magic is failing and Ged is aging, and where it's just this sudden realization that we're at the end. And it kind of felt, I guess, it kind of feels somewhat true to life. And I know I'm saying that as sort of as a 31-year-old. I'm not exactly old, but it's kind of like you're growing up and you're in this great childhood that you're having, and then you sort of look around one day and you're like, oh, I'm not a child anymore. I'm an adult. And it kind of felt like that's what happened with these books. Is we're kind of like enjoying these stories of Ged, and he's getting up to all these crazy adventures, and then the third book, it's suddenly like, bang, we're old. It's over now. There's no more adventures. This is now the opportunity to reflect and try and impart some of this knowledge onto younger generations. And that was just kind of like my reading experience with this book, which was really, really nice, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm definitely going to be rereading these stories again. Something else I really loved about this book is the character of Arren, and just sort of the role that he plays within the story. And I found him a really fascinating character, or at least a really nice and refreshing character. And I say that knowing that this series is now like 50 years old. And I think that was one of the most startling things, is how fresh and relevant this book and these series really feels, despite the fact that it was written so long ago. I mean, it must have just been incredible reading it during release time in the, I think it was the 70s. It was the 70s. I just went and checked and edited out that little bit, but must have been an incredible reading experience reading them, because they just still feel so fresh and relevant. But the character of Arren is this. He's a prince, and he's the Prince of Inlad, and that's obviously, you know, something we've got to take into account. But besides from that, he's not magically inclined. He's not 6'4", big and strong. He's just kind of like this regular dude, and he's just trying to sort of find himself within this world. And I really found that quite refreshing, in that, you know, fantasy series, of course, often have, you know, the promised one, or the big strong character, or, you know, this incredible swordsman or something like this. And then we get this character of Arren, and Arren is just kind of like this regular child. He's got no magical capabilities. He's got no capabilities with a sword or anything like that make him extraordinary. He's outside of being a prince, he's just a relatively ordinary character. And you of course need that tension in some way, which is why he is a prince. And the story, I felt like, was him really trying to understand or learn who he is through action, about who he is outside of being royalty. And of course, yeah, like I said, you do need some kind of tension for him to realize what he is outside of that thing. You know, it would be, you do need him being a prince to then realize through the course of this story what life is like outside of being a prince. So I found it really, really beautiful for that. And then just the overarching story, even though I've spoken about it and haven't remembered it as much, but this idea that magic is failing in the world, and of course Ged is aging. And there was something about it that just felt so incredibly, I guess, poignant, because it feels so relevant today. You know, magic is failing, and I don't know, I don't quite know how to place a finger on it yet, and maybe it'll develop as I think about it more and more as time goes on. but there's just something about the idea that magic is failing and diminishing in this world that just, I think, feels kind of relevant to today, in today's world. I don't know if it's social media and like people constantly trying to represent the perfect life, that they're failing to live a life themselves. They're too busy trying to capture the perfect view or put together these videos and stuff. And I say that myself, putting out podcasts and stuff like that and filming myself, but it's just kind of like this constant hustle of trying to present a perfect life that's somehow better than everyone else's, that if we actually all just switched off our phones, we might have a more rich and meaningful experience with the human experience to get a bit high level like that. So I don't know if there was just, maybe it's because I'm just slightly getting older. Like I said, I've realized I'm not a child anymore. I'm 31, and it's kind of like the magic of childhood is slowly fading from my life, that it just kind of hit me in a different way. But it just made for this really, really great reading experience. And I realize I've sort of been talking the whole time and I've never actually read a quote except for the opening quote to the episode. And I did sort of save some quotes to read because I thought you absolutely need to hear some of this writing. So hopefully I do it justice. So here we go. But when we crave power over life, endless wealth, unassailable safety, immortality, then desire becomes greed. And if knowledge allies itself to that greed, then comes evil. Then the balance of the world is swayed and ruin weighs heavy in the scale. And such a simple but beautiful line, very, very deep in terms of meaning, but when we crave power over life, endless wealth, unassailable safety, immortality, that's kind of what I was talking about. In maybe it's social media that I'm thinking about when I think the magic of life is diminishing that little bit, because people are craving that kind of immortal sense of being online, and we're spending too much time online. Maybe that's what I'm talking about, but it's just kind of quotes like that that really, really hit me. I've got some others here that I'm absolutely going to read to you, so stay tuned. It's just sometimes these quotes that are just really simple but beautiful lessons that we can all carry with us in our hearts moving forward. So this is one here. That is why nothing can resist us. Only one thing in the world can resist an evil-hearted man, and that is another man. In our shame is our glory. Only our spirit, which is capable of evil, is capable of overcoming it. I mean, this is a book for apparently, not children, but maybe like young adults. And you're just hitting us with lines like that. And it's like, no, this isn't okay. This is top quality literature. So, I mean, there's one other quote that I would absolutely love to read to you, but it's pretty much an entire page. And they're absolutely books that I'm going to come back to time and time again, because they're just so beautiful. And they're the kind of stories that I think upon reread, you're going to pull out different lines and different quotes that speak to you at different times in your life. And it was just an incredible reading experience. I mean, I'm just so glad I picked up these books. I can't, like I said, absolutely wait to get to the final 3 books. But there are other books to read in between. So, I mean, a near perfect series. I think I rated the first 2 books a 4.5 out of 5. This is definitely a 4.5 as well. In general, the series is near perfect. Like I said, definitely in my top 5 of fantasy series. I really enjoyed this, guys. I thought it was an incredible piece of literature, incredible piece of art, incredible story. I had a beautiful time spending time with it. I'm more than happy that I've still got 3 books to go, but I'm going to hold off on them for a bit. So yeah, Earthsea, The Farthest Shore, Ursula K. Guin. What a book. Okay, now comes the time to announce the next series of fantasy sci-fi books I'm doing. I'm very much aware that these probably are more sci-fi dystopian than fantasy, but they're books that I've wanted to read for a while. There's 3 of them. It is the Hunger Games trilogy. I've only got 2 so far because I've only managed to find 2 through my searching of secondhand bookshops. I am trying to find them secondhand. I've wanted to read these for a while because I watched the first movie, I think when it came out, whenever that was, and kind of enjoyed it, but didn't think much of it. And then I think it was last year, I finally went and watched all 4 films, because they split the last film into 2 films like they're doing so much of these days to make that extra bit of money. And I was actually really impressed with how dark these stories are. And it made me want to read the books, because I was like, wow, this was actually a lot more adult than I remember. I mean, that second film was incredible. I thought it ended wonderfully, but just, yeah, incredibly powerful stories as told through the film. So I'm just, I guess, keen to see if the books are that dark, if they give a different sense, if they give a different experience. If they go into any more detail, books are often greater than the movies, and if I really enjoyed the movies, that means I should really enjoy the books. So I'm really excited to be jumping into these books. Like I said, I've never read them. They're kind of a bit more of a angle towards the youths of the day, but I think I'm still going to enjoy them. So stay tuned for that. The Hunger Games 1, 2, and 3, October, November, and December. Okay, here we are at the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. I really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. Just feel free to like and subscribe, anything like that. I mentioned in the episode that there was a longer quote that I wasn't going to read because I thought it was too long, but we're at the end of the episode now. So if you do want to listen, here we go. This is a quote on page 361 from The Farthest Shore. It's a bit long, so strap in, but I hope you enjoy it. Arren was silent, pondering this. Presently the mage said, speaking softly, "Do you see, Arren, how an act is not, as young men think, like a rock that one picks up and throws and hits or misses, and that's the end of it? When that rock is lifted, the earth is lighter. The hand that bears it is heavier. When it is thrown, the circuits of the stars respond, and where it strikes or falls, the universe is changed. On every act, the balance of the whole depends. The wind and seas, the power of water and earth and light, all that these do and all that these beasts and green things do is well done and rightly done. All these act within the equilibrium, from the hurricane and the great whale's sounding to the fall of a dry leaf and the gnat's flight. All they do is done within the balance of the whole. But we, insofar as we have power over the world and over one another, we must learn to do what the leaf and the whale and the wind do of their own nature. We must learn to keep the balance. Having intelligence, we must not act in ignorance. Having choice, we must not act without responsibility. Who am I, though I have the power to do it, to punish and reward playing with men's destinies?"